Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending, of course, on when and where you are joining us from. This is the EPN podcast, a podcast that's been designed to demystify the sales profession, sort of lift the curtain a little bit, and allow people to peer behind for those that have either started their sales journey or maybe considering a career in sales. We're looking to do that is by chatting with various salespeople, sales leaders, who will share tips, tricks, and insights, some of the challenges they experienced and how they overcame them. Now, today we are joined by Tom Crilly-McKean, and I hope I pronounced your surname right. I'm terrible at pronunciation. Love that. Tom's an experienced creator, implementer, and facilitator of global enablement and development programs. So really excited for this session. I think within EMEA, enablement programs are undervalued, I think it's fair to say. Now, conscious I've been talking for quite a while, so Tom, would you like to introduce yourself and just tell the audience a little bit more about you?
Sure. So my name is Tom Crilly-McKean. I'm the Sales Enablement Manager currently at Lead Forensics, which is one of the leading MarTech platforms in the market right now. I have been in sales, broadly speaking, for probably the last 7-8 odd years, both as an individual contributor, team manager, and that type of thing. And in the last kind of 4 or 5, I've drifted more into the overall enablement space. Firstly as a bit of a stretch role, and more recently as a bit of sole focus. Outside of that, I'm just obsessed with all things consistent in self-dev, generally a bit of a foodie and music nerd, so don't get me started. And very happy to be here, Jordan.
Love that. I know you said don't get you started, but what's your favourite dish and what's your favourite genre?
Oh, you're killing me. Favorite dish. So if it's to eat, it's probably anything my grandmother would make, because, when you've been doing something for 70, 80 years, you can't quite compare. If it's me cooking, I'm really into kind of Cajun and French at the moment, because again, pretentious apparently. And genre, oh God, is it a bit of a cop-out to say indie? If it's got a polyrhythm or something I can get fairly nerdy about, I'll probably be happy.
Nice. That's awesome. Cool. So getting into the meat of it, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, what drew you to sales, and what kept you in sales when those really tough days inevitably hit you.
Yeah, so I'm very conscious that there are very rarely ever kids born who, when knee-high, say, when I grow up, I want to sell stuff. So that's always a bit of a concern. So for me, I fell into it as so many people do. What I actually did as my degree, so I went to university in Swansea and I studied linguistics. I grew up as a just massive nerd of all things languages. I've always been obsessed by the cultures, and I did okay in it in my A-levels. So I thought, cool, let's toss around for 3 years and look at verbs or whatever it was. Without realizing, this was at the beginning of the current crisis in Yemen, and Swansea at that time was the UK's second biggest sanctuary city. So I spent a good 3 odd years teaching people as part of my course, completely pro bono, and I absolutely loved it. Really gave me a love for kind of the development side, which would come later on in terms of enablement. And I did that till I was graduating at about 21. Problem with that though, good karma, gets you into heaven, doesn't pay rent, and I quite like nice things, and I'm a bit of a bad person. So I immediately joined a startup in Reading, which is where I have some family there, and I moved back. I luckily took to it quite quickly. So I started as an SDR, the 16, 17-hour days that we've all done. Enjoyed it quite heavily, more from a kind of a camaraderie perspective, and then started making money out of it. I was lucky enough to kind of progress in the kind of the sector I was in at that time, which is agency selling, mainly in industrial energy. And I absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed the hard work that went into it. I loved the paychecks, and it was absolutely great. In terms of what really kept me when things got difficult, it was about understanding why. Whether this be a competitiveness element, I've got to beat myself and beat the last quarter, I've got to be just, that guy who's currently beating me, or if it's more just an overarching view, what always benefited me is I never separated results from what I was trying to get out of it. Because we've all had that quarter, we've had that half, or that year, in some cases I definitely have, where it's, a little bit painful to open the CRM, to put it politely. I think as soon as you move that away from something that you are actually working towards on a personal level, that's the first stage in career suicide. If you have something like that, it's going to keep you in the field no matter what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's finding that key motivation, right? That why. Why do I get out of bed in the morning? What is driving me forward? So I really love that. And it's funny you say that there's really not many people that, or many children that go, you know what? Yeah, sales, that's for me. Though, I say that I used to create sort of seasonal businesses with my brother. So winter, it was all essentially door-to-door sales. Nice. So going around the street, our neighbouring streets, and winter it was ploughing people's drives, clearing it of snow. Autumn, leaves. Spring, planting some bulbs, a little bit of gardening, and then summer was car washing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went for very blue collar pursuits then?
Yeah, indeed. Oh, brilliant. So in those early days, you mentioned sometimes you have those tough days, those tough weeks, months, quarters. What were some of those key challenges? And what were the learnings that you took from it? How did you overcome some of those challenges that you experienced?
In terms of challenges, I can't imagine they're going to be anything different from your standard salesperson, whether that be just a crappy quarter and, got a brand new comp plan that wildly demotivates everyone, or personal problems or what have you. Life gets in the way of living, right? They're always going to be roughly the same thing. The content changes a little bit, the fine detail shifts a little bit, but it always boils down to some kind of block, whether that be personal and emotional, whether it be more a skill set issue, anything like that. In terms of overcoming them, there's really 2 stages to that for me. And the first thing is realizing this doesn't impact you as a person. It's very natural because it's such a high stress, high pressure environment. Whatever you're trying to do, you are going to take some of that home, and that is natural. And it does make you a good salesperson to a degree. But it is also a very, very good way to poison yourself slowly. So you need to be able to separate professional from personal to a fair degree on that, and then have a plan. I'm a big believer in that. Yes, you do need to graft through, you do need to push through, and sometimes work ethic is the answer. But there needs to be structure. There needs to be an end goal that you can pursue, because if there isn't, you're just going to move back slowly. It won't be consistent. It won't be repeatable, and you'll find yourself in the same hole, 6 weeks, 6 months down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a recipe for just getting caught in that hamster wheel. Yeah, brilliant. And now, I think following the year that a lot of tech businesses experienced in 2023, it was challenging to say the least. Yeah. A lot of things were thrown at businesses. There were a lot of shifts to targets that were laid out at the start of the year. And what that meant is businesses had to be quite adaptable, but so too did the people. Now, when we are experiencing drastic shifts in the market, drastic shifts in buyer behaviors, how do you stay adaptable, or how did you stay adaptable when you're an IC, and how do you enable your teams to stay really adaptable and be constantly successful, or striving to be successful throughout those really tough periods?
I think it's a really good question, because there's a few parts to that. So at the most basic level, while everything can change from products to markets to customer buying habits, selling is selling. I'm very much a classic Millerheimerite in that way, because products do not inherently make the sale. It's the salesperson, it's your ability to understand needs, diagnose problems, navigate organizations, and bring people on side. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the SaaS bubble bursting, doesn't matter if we're talking about generative AI being brought into things, no more than this changed anything in the .com burst. Not that I was around for that, but hey, we've heard about it. I'm not that old yet. It's understanding the basic underpinnings of anything. That's going to keep you above the water. When it comes to things like new technologies, new buying habits, or changes in market circumstances that can heavily impact salespeople, I'll defer quite heavily to John Barrows, if you're familiar with him, JB Selling. Absolutely, I'm a massive fan of his work. And one of the things he really mentions that I've really taken with me to future careers is this idea of balancing science and art. Salespeople, to a basic level, to me, will always be artists. We all know that top 0.5% contributor who doesn't matter what they do, Midas touch, it wins. We've all been there. We've all wanted to be that person. Very few of us get to be. But for the rest of kind of mortals like myself, it's about applying the science. Okay, this has changed in areas A, B, and C, being constantly adaptable and fundamentally aware of the wider market to that. It's not just that this thing has changed. Why has it? If it's impacting us, it's impacting the buyer as well. What do we need to change in processes, in product description, in product design, UX and UI, that is actually going to mitigate this and allow us to get back to what we need to be doing, which is that fundamental level of value-based selling. So it sounds strange to say, but a lot changes and it requires a fair amount of knowledge and just more broad holistic understanding. But if the reason you have gone from being a very high performer to a low performer is because, a new product has been brought out, were you that good of a salesperson initially, or are you putting blame in the wrong place? Because selling hasn't changed that fundamentally for the last X number of decades.
Yeah. It's a really great point, and something that popped into my head was what looks like frustration is often lack of clarity. So by having that visibility over the fundamental processes, what are the lead measures that are moving the buyer through those stages, progressing them through their buying journey? By having an understanding of that, by having clarity over the data, you can then start to identify where things might be going wrong, but a little bit harder, where you can test and optimize to have a positive impact on that next action. So I think the foundations are absolutely crucial there. Okay, brilliant. Now, as someone that was in an IC role, a fairly well-paid IC role, quite high deal values as I understand it. Quite nice package, I would assume, without putting words in your mouth.
No. But yeah, I certainly couldn't complain.
What was it that drew you to sales enablement?
So there is a personal and a professional answer to that. So on a personal level, as fatally saccharine as this is, I started as a teacher. I've known what it is to absolutely suck and just eat the curve in a variety of ways. And there is a certain degree of personal fulfillment and, all that soft stuff that comes from this role. On a personal level, having closed really big deals, I get a larger thrill out of someone I've trained being able to do that. It's very much a proud father moment. Don't know why, but it's something that's been very consistent with me and I absolutely love it. From a professional standpoint, and this is faintly more boring, it's about the role of enablement in EMEA. If we look at enablement as a function globally, historically, it's been in the States for 20, 25 odd years. It's always really been around in all of the modern iterations of selling. In EMEA, 5, 10 at a real push. And I'm very, very conscious that as buying habits change and as the market shifts towards, whether that be more due to generative AI and people having to use other tools and taking more of an integrated approach, enablement is becoming less of a nice to have, and more of a much large necessity. For me, and if I'm being completely selfish here, it's right place, right time. I studied education and know how that works, and I've done selling, and through no fault of my own, I've lucked out. And that I am in a situation where it is growing year on year, and it's something that's really, really good to see. So that's why I've ended up in this role.
Nice. I love to hear that. Sometimes it is the case. Right place, right time. You're along for the ride. I love that. Now moving into the advice section of the discussion, what is the best piece of advice that you've been given, I'd say throughout your career, but throughout life, that is applicable to sales?
So this is something I've heard said around a couple of times, but my real memory of this is in the last organization I was working with, big compliance tech company based out in the States. The man who hired me and then has later gone back into the field as an incredibly successful sales director, still in a similar industry, used to come out with the line, "Nobody dies." And that to me is the most basic thing. As salespeople and as humans under pressure, more to the point, yes, this is your rent and your bills, and more often than not, there is a fair bit of pride and ego on the line. I'm never going to say that's not important. But meaningfully, if you mess up this conversation, if you trip over your tongue, if you shit the bed and go back to sleep, call it whatever you want to call it here, no one's died. To me, the field is fundamentally hilarious. It's absurd. You are potentially cold calling people who do not know you exist to offer a service that they do not know exists, that they apparently desperately need, and they will happily spend up to 6 figures on that per year. Nothing about that is anything other than kind of fun.
Yeah.
As soon as you lose that sense of humor, that's like chip on the shoulder, and really view it as a matter of life and death, I've got to push through it, I've got to grind it out. If you are that 1% who's made of cast iron, better person than me, all power to you. I mean, my hairline's bad enough as it is. I can't imagine what it'd be like if it was like that. But honestly, it's just having fun with it. No one is going to die. Make a mistake, pick yourself up, get mocked a little bit if need be, and then have a whale of a time with it again. Because the field is always there. You are always going to lose more business than you are ever going to close. Even if you are the best salesperson ever, you may as well just be along for the ride and enjoy yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so simple yet so accurate. There was an iteration that my previous manager, Parker Beamer, used to say, same principle, but it was, look, we're not doing brain surgery here. No one dies at the end of the day. You really don't need to overcomplicate things for yourself. You're just going to start tripping yourself up. So have fun with it, be yourself. And it makes the job so much easier when you take that approach. So, it's a really good point. Now, in terms of personal, professional growth, you mentioned there that you're a bit of a self-dev geek.
Yes.
Some of the habits or best practices that you've adopted along the way?
So for me, it's all about the hardware as much as the software. So when you look at a lot of the modern self-development landscape, you do have some really, really good stuff out there, and it is kind of being eaten up in more of an influencer-led culture, which I'm sure we all have opinions on. And yeah, some of it's good, some of it less so. But it really focuses on kind of habits and skills and this thing that you have to do to get this goal. And to me, that really misses the point of self-development. Self-development is improving and maintaining the hardware so you can develop the skills. The software later on, can you tell I've been in SaaS for too many years, that's actually going to get you to where you need to be. So for me, and this is something I was taught by the person who taught me to sell, funnily enough, a very laconic Italian man, because of course it was. And it's, you need 2 outlets no matter what you are doing, physical and creative. If you do not have those, and it doesn't have to be, ultra marathons and the collected works of Picasso and Shakespeare, it's not about that. It's do something that gets you out of the house, that gets your blood pumping. We are just, organisms at the end of the day. And from a creative standpoint, if you are only living and breathing work, if you're getting no kind of mental or spiritual stimulation, firstly, that's just a bit of an unpleasant life for a lot of people, but it's also exercising the muscle. It's exercising the brain. You don't have to be good at it. God knows I am terrible at most things that I do, but it helps the health. And when you have that baseline, you're at such a lower risk of burnout, lower risk of stress, and you have the bandwidth to actually improve meaningfully without coming out with a couple of, cute self-help lines, trying to do something, not going well, and within 6 weeks, you're back at square one, -2.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's couldn't put it better myself. It's really something that I think, but being caught up in that sort of grind hustle culture is something that a lot of people often forget, and the negative impact it can have on mental health. There's a great piece of research that Jeff Risley's recently put out. If you haven't taken a look, I would highly recommend it. We really do need to start taking better care of ourselves in the profession. So yeah, conscious of time, Tom, there is one final question I would ask now, and that is, what advice would you give yourself at 10 years or would you give to anyone that might be considering a career in sales?
In sales, how would I best phrase this? Embrace the madness. You have plans, you have, neat little ideas, and you have goals, and you have processes, and theories, and structures, all the stuff I live and breathe right now. And meaningfully, they are worth less than nothing if you're not enjoying yourself. It's very easy. We've all seen these people. They come into sales or any kind of high pressure professional environment and they just break. And it's not worth it. As soon as you start taking things overly seriously, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It could be basket weaving or it could be brain surgery. You're doomed. If you aren't relaxed in what you're doing, if you aren't enjoying it, your eyes won't be open, your ears won't be clear, and you won't be learning and progressing meaningfully. You'll be too much in the brace position to actually achieve anything. If it was me particularly, this was the area I really struggled with when I first started. I took things far too seriously. And it definitely hit the pay packet for a couple of quarters. So by the time you get over that, the rest of it's just learning. And as I can't remember who taught me this one, but then it's just only hard work. If it's only hard work, you're fine. Just make sure it is only hard work.
Yeah. Tom, that has been a fantastic session. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. I'm sure our listeners will enjoy this session. Where is best for people to reach out if they do want to talk to you?
Well, I'm an absolute social media Luddite, as is relatively apparent by the look of me. Best place to get hold of me is on LinkedIn, just because I'm still relatively neophyte in all things social selling and social media, partially on purpose, but there we are, different conversation, maybe a glass of something sensible. So yeah, that would be the best place to get into contact with me. But thank you very much for having me, Jordan. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No worries. I'm sure you will be coming back for another conversation about more in detail topics. Thank you, everyone else, for joining and listening in. Until next time.